Morning all. I'd like to show you a classic game of Bobby Fischer against Paul Keres. Paul Keres, for those of you who don't know, was an Estonian chess grandmaster and a renowned chess writer. He was among the world's top players from the mid-1930s to the mid-60s. He narrowly missed a chance at the World Championship match on 5 occasions. He won the Avro 1938 tournament, and there were negotiations for a title match against Alexander Alekhine, but the match never took place due to World War II. After the war, Keres was runner-up in the candidates tournament on 4 consecutive occasions. So due to these other strong results, many chess historians consider Paul Keres the strongest player never to become world champion, and he was even nicknamed Paul II, the Eternal Second, and also the Crown Prince of Chess. So he was the only player in chess history to defeat 9 undisputed world champions. So let's have a look at this game. Paul, playing white, played e4. So this is in the Zagreb-Belgrade tournament, candidates tournament of 1959. Fischer replied with his favourite Sicilian and the Najdorf variation. After knight takes d4, knight c3, we see this a6. Now we see bishop g5, a very sharp continuation, e6, and now f4. It looks as though e5 could potentially be a threat for black, and often black tries to put the brakes on e5. Here Fischer ignored it with bishop e7 for a moment. After queen f3, the queen is also pointing down this diagonal as if to discourage b5. Fischer plays now queen c7, which not only puts a little bit of pressure on this c file, but it means bishop b7 can be supported sometimes by the queen. White castles queenside, knight bd7. So the brakes have been firmly put on e5 here, it seems. Bishop e2. And now Fischer believes that b5 is possible here, because e5 can surely be answered with bishop b7 attacking the queen. So he plays b5 here, seemingly inviting this double attack, which he believes is harmless. But Paul Keres doesn't play e5 in this position. He actually takes on f6 first. If he plays e5 straight away, bishop b7, there's no problem at all here. If, for example, e takes, bishop takes, black is doing very well. In fact, f4 looks quite vulnerable in this position. Black can continue rook c8. There's no real danger here. Okay, so Paul Keres, though, his idea is now to take on f6, and it will be miserable for Fischer to take with the g pawn. White could get an advantage, for example, with something like a3 could be good prophylaxis, but even the aggressive queen h5 might carry some threats like knight takes e6. So this could be quite unpleasant for black potentially. So Fischer took with the knight, and now we see e5 being played in this position, so double attacking 2 pieces, the knight and the rook. Fischer replies with bishop b7, probably expecting queen g3, which will keep an eye on the king side. But that's not White's conception. White had prepared something special here for Fischer. Can you spot what the preparation was if I give you 10 seconds starting from now? Okay, special preparation. E takes f6, offering the queen, grabbing 1 minor piece, temporarily only 2 minor pieces after bishop takes, but now the rook is gazed at, and again this bishop as well, so it's again another double attack. Fischer just plays bishop takes f6. We see bishop takes a8. So at the moment, material technically is roughly equal. Now in this position there is a fantastic resource unearthed by engines which is different to the game continuation, which I would like to mention here, and that resource is Queen C4, which appears kind of crazy because it looks as though the bishop shouldn't be allowed to try and escape along this diagonal to go back home. So in the game we saw D5, but let's have a quick look at Queen C4. It threatens the D4 knight. For example, now knight DE2, black can play bishop takes, knight takes, B4, knight E4, which is supported by that bishop on A8. And if black castles now, this bishop's still in trouble here in this position. The knight's blocking it coming back, so it looks a bit silly to have played knight E4, but I just wanted to emphasize that this position is very nice for black. Now if we go back to Queen C4, what can white do here? If knight CE2, that offers the A2 pawn, which can be taken, and you know, the bishop, if it comes back, let's say the bishop comes back here, black has a good position here. If castling, there's quite a few threats in this position. For example, check and queen takes B2, and this might actually be very, very good for white. For example, rook HE1, check, queen takes, and what is white doing? If rook B1, for example, queen A2, the queen's coming back, and this is a bit precarious for white. So it's a very interesting continuation here, this Queen C4 computer resource. And you might think, well, hold on, there was something wrong with that, surely, that white could have flung in a check. The thing is, king F8, and now the knight's holding on to the bishop, and if knight CE2 to hold on to the knight, then a nudge with E5, and black ends up better here. What can white do? He's losing material here, and it's going to be worse. If he tries, for example, B3, queen C5, and this would be nice for black. So anyway, in the game though, Fischer tried to lock the bishop immediately with D5, and we saw bishop takes D5 with the black king still in the center. This looks a bit scary. This rook is over there. How is black going to get this rook out? Fischer takes on D4, a very accurate move. Rook takes D4, E takes D5, inviting a very scary check, but also knight takes D5 looks very dangerous. Queen C5, check, king F8. So for the moment it looks as though, okay, two rooks and the exchange down, knight versus rook, but this rook's not doing anything. C3 supporting the rook. And now Fischer creates an evacuation plan for the rook with H5. Very exciting stuff to try and resourcefully get the rook out like this. For example, challenging the center at some point, or rook E6. And Keres is keen to lock this rook out. He plays F5, trying to create a lock on this rook with F6. Fischer goes rook H6 anyway, and we see F6. Okay, now if Fischer gives back, sacrifices the exchange, this isn't so hot. Even if he keeps his pawns intact with the check here, two rooks versus the queen is not going to mean too much in this kind of position. Might be even slightly better. So Fischer has to accept double pawns, not losing the exchange. And we see knight F4, and this still looks quite dangerous for black. H4, because otherwise if white plays H4, that could actually be a serious positional threat potentially for white at some point. But black plays H4 here. We see check, king G7, rook E8, threatening mate now, mating, a mating net with check, check, and let's just show you that. This would be a mating net here, like this. So what does Fischer do here with the two rooks on the back row? He plays check. He tries to drive this knight back. King d2 check. The knight's driven back, and now he has an opportunity to use his rook g6, and he's doing very well now, despite White's amazing innovation in the opening. g3, and now a very strong move indeed. Instead of hg, actually the move f5 is played, and it's even got an idea that maybe h3, and then that pawn's quite advanced, don't dissolve it. And if taking here, f4, and the point is that f3 is like a menace. So f5, very strong move by Fischer. He's holding on to this pawn. It could be a useful asset. White plays check, and now gets rid of a pair of rooks. And now this pawn, which could be dangerous, if Fischer's going to play h3, that could be dangerous after taking there. White snaps this off. So there's a choice of two pawns here. Which one to take? Well, actually, in the game, Fischer took the h2 one. Perhaps it's a little bit stronger to play queen takes h4, because it's very difficult to defend this h2 pawn. But also this f pawn is getting out of the way of the f pawn, and this would be very dangerous as well. There might not even be an immediate rush to take on h2. Black's principal threats, well, include queen takes h2, but also f4 potentially. In the game though, queen takes h2 was played, and this allows rook d4, not only defending that pawn, but that pawn is important to hold up these pawns, like g5 held up a little bit. But still, black technically is doing very well. Queen h1. So the queen is now threatening to be a menace with queen b1. King c2, preventing queen b1. King e5, the king steps in. So White is trying to set up a fortress to try and draw this position potentially. And also maybe if White can liquidate some pawns, get rid of these pawns, drawing chances might increase. So he plays a4. Black's asset though, a major asset in this position, is this passed pawn. If this passed pawn can be got going, then it's very bad for White. Queen f1, the knight is attacked, it moves. Check. King b3, and now Fischer plays b takes a4 check, and this presents some problems. Let's have a quick look. If rook takes a4, queen d2 is apparently a very strong move in this position, threatening check. This knight is a bit in trouble. So if knight a2, this doesn't look right for White to have to do this. Now f4 is very dangerous. This passed pawn is very dangerous indeed. So let's go back. In the game, actually, Keres didn't take on a4. He actually played king a3, and now Fischer played queen c2, attacking the knight. Now after knight d3 check, black is threatening mate, so here after stepping back with the king, b3 mate has to be stopped. We see knight c5, and it still looks as though White's going to be collecting these two pawns. Queen c1, threatening check now, and queen takes b2. Rook takes a4. And now in this position, again, f4 here looks like a very powerful resource to try and start using this pawn. In fact, Fischer played queen e3, attacking the knight. Now knight takes a6 was played, and now f4. This pawn is just really dangerous here. Rook d4. And f3 looks as though it's possible here, but king f5 was played. Knight b4. Queen e7, pinning the knight, and it looks again as though f3 is on the cards. King b3, unpinning. Now grabbing this h pawn, meaning two connected passed pawns now. Knight d3, holding on to the f4 pawn. c4, White has ambitions with his c pawn as well. Queen g3, attacking the knight, or rather pinning it. It's protected by the rook on d4. And now Fischer is starting to be prepared like this, and this queen will also c7 if it sits there. c5, f3, king c4, f2. It's getting very critical. White now takes this off, so can his c-pawn help him after c6? Well, Fischer's not convinced. He plays queen takes b2. Not worried about that pawn for a moment. It can't step forward because of the check. And taking on c7 if it steps forward. King c5. Check. King d5. And White is in real trouble. Fischer played g4. And now Black, showing ambition for the pawn, played rook c4, allowing, I guess you can spot it, queen e5 checkmate. So a very interesting opening innovation in this game, sacrificing the queen for 3 pieces. And Fischer just accepted all material and got his rook out resourcefully. And his f-pawn was the one that was triumphant with the queen in the endgame scenario. Hope you enjoyed that. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.